Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Resilience Building Mastery Foundations of Executive Presence Module 1 course. I am Dr. Parker from MVP Training Solutions, and thank you all for being here today. A couple of things I want you to keep in mind today as we go through the course itself. This is the first module of our Resilience Building Mastery Certification course. So this is the foundations of executive presence, resilience for the executives. We're going to take about 60 minutes or so to go through the session, 4 different modules. We'll talk about what that looks like along the way. There's more information about the course itself, and all of our 13 courses are on our homepage at mvptrainingsolutions.com. Feel free to go out to check those out at any point. And this particular session is being brought to you on our Skool platform. Our Skool platform is where we're learning and developing and growing our MVP Training Solutions community. So if you have not joined, or if you know someone that could benefit from being part of this free community, by all means, have them reach out to us. We'll send out an invite to them. On the Skool platform, when you go to the classroom page, you will find information about this particular course and some of the previous courses we've already done live. There'll be a live video that'll be produced after this show, this session, as well as a slide presentation that you see here will be available as well. And we'll also have a toolkit takeaway in the classroom link for this course that you can download and print out for yourselves as well. Again, I am Dr. Parker, and we'll go through this session today together. Let me share my screen with you. All right. So it is my hope you're able to see the screen. Right. That's who I am. That's how you can reach out to us, our accreditation, and some of the agencies here in Las Vegas that we are members of. Let's see if I could get. All right. That's who I am. A little bit about me, my military career, what I currently do now, listed there. This is a course description of the entire 12 modules course that we offer, not just this module here. And these are the same for the objectives, course objectives for the 12 module course, as well as the learning outcomes for the 12 module certification course. However, this is the area we'll be focusing in on today for module 1. These are going to be the 4 areas that we cover today for the foundations of executive resilience. Let's get started. So, when we're talking about the origin story of resilience, the language origin for resilience started in the 1600s. The early meaning itself, it meant to rebound, right? To rebound. So resilience entered the English language in the early 1600s, rooted in the Latin word to resiliere, right? To rebound or to recoil, right? So we're talking about maybe a piece of metal in engineering terms, right? So in the engineering and materials area in the 1800s, technical meaning, elasticity, and the recovery, right? In the physical sciences, resilience became linked to materials capacity to return towards its prior shape. So a piece of metal, you bend it, and its ability to go back to its natural form. A piece of plastic, shape after stress or compression, it goes back to its natural state. In the ecology and systems thinking in the 1970s, resilience was thought of as a system capacity, meaning, reframing it in a way that we're shaping the modern systems resilience thinking, right? Our thinking is resilient. Our thinking can go under a bit of stress and compression and then come back, right? That's what we're talking about, how that evolved in the 70s. And then in the 1990s, 1900s, and the 2000s, right? We're talking about in psychology and human development, the resilience as an adaptive function, right? In psychology, resilience became really framed as a successful adaptation under adversity and stress, meaning our bodies, right, under stress, and our body's ability to bounce back, because we're talking about human development here, right? APA, the American Psychological Association, defined that that ability or resilience as a process, an outcome of adapting through mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility. Again, we're talking about human development here, our body's ability to bounce back, to get back into the game. And then in the 2000s and to present day, resilience itself, it's more of a trait to practice, right? We understand resilience as a trait, and then we're putting it into practice in organizations, in our management styles, in our leadership styles, in our development of our people, things like that. So in management and risk work, resilience really did shift towards routines, things like continuity planning, capacity buffers, monitoring, rapid decisions, and recovery capabilities across things like our people, our processes, in our technology structures. This stream really often borrows from the ecology's systems focus, right? From the ecology's systems focus, resilience. So this is just a brief kind of origin story of resilience. How did it get to where we know it is today into our organizations, things like that? And we'll touch on a little bit more about that a little bit later in this particular session. But when we're looking at defining resilience in executive leadership, that means that the ability to stay effective under pressure, recover from setbacks, and to continue making sound decisions during periods of uncertainty within our organization. This is going to include regulating our emotions, learning from disruption, and helping others maintain focus and performance while any conditions that may have come up or have changed. So, defining resilience means we're addressing challenges, bouncing back effectively, maintaining performance consistently, and leveraging setbacks for growth. So, addressing challenges strategically means that executives must use a structured process for problem solving, to identify issues, to assess the impact, and to select a response aligned with that particular goal or those constraints that may have presented themselves. So the focus on priorities, clear decision criteria, and coordinated actions are going to be critical at this stage. Bouncing back effectively. Our recovery function and our confidence, right, after a setback without repeating the same errors, is us bouncing back effectively. But what does that look like? And it's going to be different for everybody, that bounce back, that process of getting back into the game. It's going to be different for everyone. But on the surface, it's going to look like, stabilized organizations, stabilized operations. Our momentum that we had going forward before is going to be restored. And we get to apply the lessons that we learned during that particular time to prevent any reoccurrence of falling off. So that's bouncing back effectively. Maintaining performance consistently means that we must sustain reliable outputs and decision quality across the shifting conditions. As the things are changing, we have to maintain or sustain reliable outputs and reliable decision making, because that's what our people rely on us for as executive leaders. We got to protect critical processes, manage energies, our energies as well as the energies of the folks we are tasked with leading. And we've got to maintain our attention and keep our standards stable under any pressures that may come from internal or external entities. That's us maintaining our performance consistently. And then leveraging setbacks for growth means that as executives, we get to treat failures and disruptions as data, critical data for our leadership improvement. Setting or leveraging our setbacks translates into changes in our skills, in our processes, in our training, in our development, and possibly in our leadership behaviors that's going to strengthen future performance, our performance as well as the performance of our team members. That's how we're going to leverage setbacks for growth. Team impact. Resilience does have an impact on our teams, right? So as executive leaders, we have to understand what that impact looks like. So team impact simply means that the measurable effects the team's work has on the goals, the stakeholders of our organization, and the operational results, right? Team impact is going to reflect our outcomes such as quality, quantity, speed, reliability, and how well the team supports each other while meeting the standards that we have set for them. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about team impact. It has an impact. So it has the ability to inspire team resilience, encourage perseverance, solve problems, and to support a safe team environment. It absolutely does. Let's talk about inspiring team resilience. That means that we are modeling steady behaviors under pressure and setting expectations for recovery after a setback. We are establishing that for our organizations, right? Inspiring team resilience means that we are reinforcing policies, we are providing direction, and recognizing effective coping and problem solving skills. We have to be attuned to that in ourselves and for our team members. Encouraging perseverance and flexibility. That means that we are promoting sustained efforts while adjusting methods when conditions change. Encouraging perseverance and flexibility supports experimentation. Very important. Rapid feedback and course correction without lowering or abandoning the organizational standards as a whole, right? We have to be flexible to maintain the standards, hold the line. We're going to get through what we're getting through, and then we're going to get back to the performance level that is expected or was expected of us previously. Solving problems directly. Excuse me, that's exactly what being resilient does. It means that we are addressing issues at the source using clear facts, understanding ownership of the issues or the tasks, and the timely decisions that have to be made. Solving problems removes barriers, assigns actions, and verifies follow through until the problem is resolved. And then the support of safe team environment. That means that we're going to maintain conditions where the people share concerns. They admit they've made mistakes and they ask for help without fear of ridicule or any retribution, right? So supporting a safe team environment, it sets a respectful tone, establishes respectful norms, responds fairly across the individuals that we serve, and protects that open communication that we all expect and that we need in our organizations to be successful. Positive mindset. Positive mindset. That means that we're going to maintain a constructive, solutions based way of thinking during challenge. I'm going to say that again. A constructive, solutions focused way of thinking during challenges. Positive mindset emphasizes realistic optimism, attention to options, and steady effort when results are uncertain. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about a positive mindset. A positive mindset models optimism. It focuses on growth. It promotes balanced perspective. It reassesses internal dialogues regularly. Let's talk about it. Modeling optimism effectively means that we are showing confidence in progress while acknowledging the risks that are involved in what we're doing and the constraints that are preventing us from doing what we need to do for the mission. Modeling optimism uses clear language, focused on actions, options, and whatever the next steps may be. That's how we're going to get over those constraints. Focusing on growth opportunities is us looking for skills, process improvement, and lessons produced from the challenges that we are facing or that we've gone through, right? So focusing on that growth turns insight into specific changes in our behaviors and our training and our execution as leaders. Promote balanced perspective means that we're going to hold both strengths and gaps in our view, right, without exaggeration. We know because we're laser focused on both. We're not out here. We've narrowed our focus on our strength and our gaps. That's what we're going to attack first. And when we promote balanced perspectives, it means that we're going to weigh the evidence, right, between the strengths and the gaps that exist in our organization and consider whatever trade-offs may have to happen and avoid any extreme conclusions in order for us to get to our desired end state. And when we're talking about reassessing internal dialogues regularly, our internal self-talk is what we're talking about. We got to monitor self-talk for bias, right? Unhelpful assumptions and that defeatist mindset in our conclusions, right? So assessing internal dialogues regularly replaces that negative talk with evidence-based statements that support calm decisions and consistent effort on our part. Practical strategies. Practical strategies are those clear, actionable methods that's going to be used to reach our goals under whatever constraint there may be at the time. It could be something like time is a constraint. It could be something like a resource might be a constraint. It could be simply the level of risk as a constraint, right? So these things translate into steps, roles, and routines that support consistent execution. That's what we're talking about when we say practical strategies, clear, actionable methods used to reach the goals. Adapt operational approaches, reframe objectives, take timely effect, and strengthen organizational stabilities. So adapt or operational approaches. That means that we are adjusting workflows. We're adjusting roles. We're adjusting our methods to match the current conditions or constraints that we've encountered along our journey. Adapting the operational approaches uses feedback from the results to refine our processes and remove whatever friction that may have been in our way before. So we have to listen to that feedback, or we have to understand those lessons learned from our past in order for us to be able to move forward. That's how we adapt our operational approaches. Reframe objectives purposefully. That means that we're going to restart goals to clarify our intent. Maybe they just didn't understand what we needed. We're going to restate the goals to clarify intent. We're going to establish success criteria, and we're going to clarify, again, if there are any trade-offs that we need to make along the way. When we reframe our objectives, we are aligning our objectives with the organizational mission, the mission needs, while we are setting realistic scope and timelines. That's how we reframe the objectives. We don't just give up. We encounter a constraint and we figure out a way around, over, or under that constraint. Take timely, effective actions. That means that we are deciding and acting within the required window, right? So if it's a certain timeline, we got to make that decision. We got to take action within that timeline with the required window to reduce risk and maintain momentum. Taking timely, effective actions mean that we are prioritizing high impact steps, the most important, the critical steps, right? We're assigning who's responsible for achieving or managing and or monitoring those high impact steps along the way. And they're going to track the completion. As executives, that's what we are responsible for doing. We got to track the completion of those tasks. That's taking time. That's taking timely, effective actions. And then strengthen organizational sustainability. When we're talking about organizational sustainability, it's kind of like the pillars here of sustainability within almost every organization, one being environmental, one being social, and one being economic pillars of sustainability. So through practical strategies of resilience building, we're able to strengthen our planet, our people, our profits. That's what we are talking about here. Here's a scenario for you regarding this particular section, rerouting the recovery plan scenario. Feel free at any point during the video itself, the recording of the video, to pause the video and come up with some thoughts about the scenario itself and then address the student tasks. Reflection questions. These are some reflection questions that I would like for you to pause the video, read through the questions, and come up with some ideas and some thoughts on how you would address the scenario questions. Now, we talked a little bit about the origin of the term resilient, right? Early on when we first started. Here, what we're going to talk about the historical perspective of resilience within organizations. That means that this refers to how organizations across different eras have understood and or built the capacity to withstand disruptions. Remember, we talked about the ability to bounce back, piece of metal bend, and its ability to bend it to come back to its normal shape. Piece of plastic, right? Under stress, if we bend it, its ability, its capacity to withstand disruption and to recover from a performance perspective as an organization, right? So this historical perspective, emphasizes the lessons learned from past crises, industry shifts that may have occurred over the years, institutional failures that have shaped the modern practices, such as continuity planning, risk management, adaptive leadership, those things. So us as leaders, executive leaders, we are looking at the environment around us, the organizations that are similar to us, and see how they responded to some type of disruption. Then we take steps to prevent that from happening long before it happens, right? So the historical perspective in resilience in organizations emerge from historical challenges. Historical challenges shapes what we do now. Proven during economic wartime crisis, required flexibility, leadership styles. Pivoting ensured survival. right? Pivoting ensured survival. So let's talk about emerge from historical challenges. That means that the organizational resilience developed as leaders faced reoccurring disruptions such as supply shortages, resource shortages, labor shifts, technology changes. Those things help shape the current organizational resilience strategies. These type of experience shape the practices for continuity, redundancy, and the rapid problem solving that we know today within organizations. Proven during economic and wartime crisis means that major downturns, right, and wartime conditions that are even happening now, they really have tested whether or not the organizations can, let's see, if the organization can really maintain their essential operations, right? While those resources are short and while the demands are higher, things like that, can they maintain their operations? That's what we're talking about during economic and wartime crisis. So resilience showed through sustaining output and protecting the critical capabilities and recovering faster than peers than their peers when the organization compare their employees' recovery ability to other organizations' level of recovery, right, during a crisis, as an example. Required flexible leadership styles. That means that the leaders needed to adjust decisions, their decision speed, the decision quality, their communication, and their control levels solely based on the threat level and the team readiness. So depending on what the issue was out there that was looming over the organization, maybe it was a financial crisis, maybe it was a government shutdown, maybe it was a pandemic of some sort. They had to base or make their adjustments in their leadership, decision, speed, communication, and control levels based on that level of threat. Flexibility includes things like shifting directive, right? Shifting your actions as the leader, delegating more as the leader, and any collaborative planning that may have to occur during the evolution of the crisis. Those are things that require us to have flexible leadership styles. And pivoting ensured survival. That means the organization survived when they redirected their strategy, products, or their operations in response to whatever the new constraint may have been, whatever the external issue, threat have presented itself, the way it presented itself is what we're talking about here. Being able to pivot to a new strategy based on the new constraints and the new opportunities that may actually come from that external shift, right? So effective pivoting really does rely on having clear priorities, having rapid reallocations of resources. You have to be clear on what they are, where to find them, when you need them. And it requires the executive to have a disciplined approach to accessing those resources. Growth of crisis management. Crisis management is that process to where it has evolved over time, what it looks like now than it did, 50 years ago. Because 50 years ago, we had different crises than we do now, right? 9/11 was a significant crisis, and it really redirected how, the security protection of federal buildings, that type of stuff, right? So when we're talking about the growth of crisis management, we're referring to how the organizations expanded their formal practices for preparing and responding to and recovering from a disruptive event. We're talking specifically about the preparation that goes into the success of getting through or being resilient from a crisis. Growth crisis management reflects a shift from improvise, meaning we're being very reactive, towards being a structured plan, defined roles, coordinated communication, and other actions improvement, right? So we go from being reactive to proactive in our strategies associated with preparing to meet crisis in our organization. So as you'll see here, highlighted crisis management, highlighted collective efforts, formalized contingency planning, encourage proactive strategies, prepared organizations for uncertainty. So when we're talking about highlighted collective efforts, that means that the crisis response showed that outcomes depend on the coordinated action. A coordinated action across teams, across other leaders, across partners of our organization, our stakeholders, and the various leadership levels within our organization, right? So highlighted collective efforts demonstrated shared situational awareness and helped us align our priorities. It helped us to reduce delays and any conflicting decisions. That's what the new crisis management practices preparedness does for the organization. Formalized contingency planning. Formalized contingency planning. When I talk about contingency planning, as you see here in the chart, contingency planning consists of a risk assessment, triggering events, roles, and responsibilities, right? As you can see listed there, at least 6. That's going to be different for every organization. But when we're talking about contingency planning, formalizing the contingency planning, we are no longer now reactive because now we've developed processes, practices, and procedures to be able to address crises that may occur. So these plans are going to address or define what the triggers are, what the roles are, who's responsible for what the resources are, where we can find them, the communication paths that we will need to execute along the way and as part of our recovery steps. Now, in the military sector, this is regularly done during exercises, right? We test these things and we write down what we learned. Then we formalize those and then we put it on the shelf. So when we face that crisis again, we're able to pull off the shelf, open up the book, go to the checklist, follow the checklist down to the steps to address that specific level of contingency. That's what we're talking about formalized contingency planning. Encouraging proactive strategies. The newer crisis management practices allow us as leaders to begin scanning for risks, testing scenarios, and really building those preventive controls before an event actually happens. That's what scenario planning and things like that does for us. Proactive work reduces that impact, protect criteria or critical functions, and improve the decision speed. So now that I am no longer reactive, I'm being proactive, the decision process for what I might need is going to be much shorter because I've already identified what the potential risk is, the target, who's responsible for what, that communication path, all those things I have already identified as the organizational leader. And that's going to speed up my decisions to execute the resources that are needed to address this particular crisis. Prepared organizations for uncertainty. That's exactly what crisis management does, right? It means that crisis management builds routines, right, for operating when information is incomplete, when conditions change, training, drills, and review cycles, all those things strengthen readiness and reduce confusion during the real incident. When it really happens, we're not running around trying to figure out what we need to do. We have a structured plan or process in place to address this issue or something very similar. Because one issue may cause 3 or 4 different reactions, right? So we have to be mindful of that. And the growth of crisis management has prepared organizations for uncertainty. Excuse me. Modern complexities. The modern day complexities that we face right now are different than they were 50 years ago. Just like I mentioned earlier on with the crisis management planning, the crises that we face now are very different from the crisis that we faced then. And it's no different now that we're in a modern day. In modern day, the complexities that we face now refer to things like the interconnectedness of everything that we do, right? The fast changing conditions that shape how the organizations operate and how they face disruptions. So it's going to include things like global supply chains, uh, digital dependencies that our organizations are now kind of saddled with, right? There's no going back, right? The regulatory pressures, the federal, the state, the international, the local regulatory pressures that are imposed on organizations as they're trying to operate their business. And that rapid shifts in the market, right? Things were good this year or this month. 3 months later, the market has shifted and we're down now. They're no longer buying these products. The consumer has moved their attentions to somewhere else, things like that. And then also to the modern day complexities. Also, we have to account for our stakeholder expectations. Our stakeholders 50 years ago expected different things than our stakeholders do now because of all the other things that we are now saddled with within the organization. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about the modern day complexity, right? Addressed interconnected disruptions, the integrated resilience into operations, which it did. It aligned people, processes, and technology and strengthened organizational continuity. So modern day complexities and resilience address the interconnectedness of our disruption. That means the organizations recognize that the many disruptions across our organization, maybe in one, can cascade across the organization, whether it's across the supply, whether it's across the HR department, whether it's across the finance department, or even might even bleed into our company's or organization's reputation, right? So resilience work focused on dependencies, second order effects, and cross-functional coordination, meaning we identified areas where we could come up short and we focus our resilience building behaviors to ensure that those have a lesser impact on the overall outcome of what we're trying to do. We have to bring in our cross-functional coordination across organizations so that we'll lessen the impact across the organization when something happens, right? Integrated resilience into operations. That's exactly what the leadership did. Resilience had to become part of the daily management rather than that other thing, that separate emergency function. We didn't just wait around for something to happen. We don't wait around for something to happen to get engaged in understanding how we can prevent something from happening. So we had, as an organization, we had to build into or embed things like risk checks quarterly, continuity practices, any recovery actions. We had to build those things into our standard workflows. Aligned our people, processes, and technologies. That's exactly what resilience building did during our modern day complexity. That means that effective resilience required clear roles, reliable procedures, and the systems that support visibility and rapid response. Clear decision making, right? When we are aligning our people, processes, and technologies, that alignment reduces gaps between the human decisions, the operational execution that being able to move forward, and the technical capabilities. Just because you can move forward don't mean you have the capabilities to move forward, right? You have to make sure all those things are aligned: your people, processes, your mission, and your vision. And then strengthened organizational continuity. That's what resilience building did in the modern day era. It strengthened the continuity. It improved when critical services stayed available during disruptions and returned to normal levels after the impact. Remember, we talked about a piece of plastic bending under pressure, right? And we want, that the piece of plastic had to be resilient enough to come back to its normal form. That's what we're talking about here. Strengthening the organizational continuity means that the continuity improved when critical services stayed available. Just because we had a significant event doesn't mean we're out of the game now. We have to get back into the game, and we have to get back in bigger, better, stronger, and faster than we were when we were in it originally. That's what we're talking about. Recent lessons. We've had a few, and we have a few now. We got the tariff scenario happening right now. Organizations are trying to figure out, how, what to do with that. We've had, the wars, international wars that have involved Americans, whether it's funding or whether it's equipment or personnel. These are recent lessons. These recent lessons refer to insights organizations gained from disruptions. What did we learn from that event, right? And high pressure events that reveal the gaps in preparedness, decision making, and execution. What did we learn under those umbrellas of readiness, right? From those events. These lessons ultimately should guide whatever improvement steps that we need to make, especially within risk controls, workforce readiness, training, development, preparedness, communication, and recovery planning from the event itself. So yes, recent lessons have taught us how to be more resilient. Example, COVID-19, right? The recent lessons validated flexibility in our operations. Well, it really did expose some flexibilities in our operations, right? Recent lessons promoted digital transformation and shaped resilient org strategies. It did. So when we're talking about exposed gap in COVID-19, that pandemic revealed some very serious weaknesses in things like staffing, the depth of our staffing, the supply continuities of our organizations, the health protections that are associated with our organizations, and that remote work readiness that was very new for a lot of people. Many organizations found limited visibility into dependencies and lacked the clear triggers for rapid decisions. Validated flexibility of flexible operations. All right, that means organizations with adaptable workflows and cross-trained teams maintained their service levels. They did well through COVID-19, for instance, right? So flexibility included things like rapid role shifts, revised processes, and a lot of faster approval steps. Rather than going through 10 different people for the answer or get approval, maybe they went down to 5 at that time, that type of stuff, right? Shape resilience-oriented strategies. That means that many leaders expanded their planning to include scenario testing, buffer capacities, and risk-informed investment decisions. These are some things that we learned from recent events. Here's a scenario for you to review. Feel free to pause the video at any point to review the scenario and address the student task below. Reflection questions, same as before. Feel free to pause the video, review the reflection question, and address them as you see fit. The philosophy of resilience in high pressure roles. Here we're going to be talking specifically about the cognitive process. The cognitive process itself are those mental operations that we use to notice cues, interpret events, regulate attentions, our attentions and attentions of the folks we are responsible for, and to choose responses under pressure. Now, in higher pressure roles, resilient cognition emphasizes accurate appraisal, meaning you look at it, I've appraised this, I've assessed this, I've analyzed this, and I can do it with a level of accuracy. Discipline, focus, and decision making that stays aligned with the priorities despite stress and uncertainty. That's what we're talking, the cognitive process. Manage stress response, balance decision making, reframe challenges positively, and foster clear thinking. So when we're talking about managing stress responses, we mean recognizing the physiological and emotional signals early. And we are going to use control techniques to prevent impulsive reactions. These impulsive reactions could be from us or those around us, right? So managing stress responses supports a steadier level of judgment, calmer communications, and safer choices made under pressure situations, right? Balanced decision making means that we combine speed and accuracy with weighing risk, evidence, and impact. Reframe challenges positively means that we're going to interpret adversity as a problem to be solved, right? And a source of usable lessons that we can learn from, not really of a personal failure. You failed, you broke this, you did this wrong. That's not what we're trying to do here, right? We're talking about positively reframing the challenges, right? Because it shifts our attention from blame to creative options, actions, and any lessons that may occur from that. And then fostering clear thinking is what it says, right? It means that we're going to keep our attention focused on key facts, priorities, and decision criteria, while filtering out whatever distractions may be there about that particular situation. Emotional intelligence, and this is only going to be one part that we'll touch on here, then we'll touch on another part a little bit later. But emotional intelligence means that we are recognizing emotions in ourselves and others. We're understanding what drives them, and using that awareness really to guide the decisions that we make as leaders and the relationships that we take on. So it's going to, support things like self-control, empathy, effective communication during conflict, stress, change, those types of things. Regulating emotion effectively, stay composed under pressure, focus on solutions, and handling criticism constructively. So emotional intelligence under the resilience building umbrella helps us to regulate our emotions effectively. That means that noticing emotional triggers early on and selecting a response that aligns with our goals, our standards, things like that for our organization is what we're wanting to do. It's going to include us slowing down in our reactions, right? You hear people say, count to 10 before you respond. That's what we're talking about. Choosing our words carefully and keeping our behaviors consistent. We don't want you to act erratically one scenario and then calm the next scenario and then erratically the next scenario. All right, we got to keep our behaviors consistent. That's what's expected of us as leaders. Stay composed under pressure means that we're going to maintain calm. We're going to maintain a certain calm tone about us. We're going to maintain steady thought and controlled actions during high stakes, high pressure scenario. And that means that when we do that, that's going to support things like providing a clear direction going forward to the folks that are waiting for us to make decisions, right? Reduce escalation. It's not going to go from us all the way up to the CEO. It's going to be at a different level. It doesn't need to get escalated because we have enough capabilities and leadership to address the issues themselves. And ultimately, it's going to build strength and trust between you and the folks that you're responsible for leading. Focus on solutions. You heard me mention it before. We've got an issue. We're not in the blame game. We just got to get in there and get it sorted, right? So shifting the attentions from blame to root cause. How did this happen? What are our options associated with getting through this? What are the next steps we're going to take to get through this? That requires us to prioritize our actions and to reduce any impact across the organization to our people, restore the performance levels. The issue has already happened. No need to sit around and complain about it. We got to get back to restoring our normal operations. And we got to prevent any reoccurrences. That's us leaning forward enough to address these issues should it happen again in the future. And then handle criticism constructively, right? Dealing with criticism. as an executive leader, you will always be under the scope, right? So ways to deal with that is to make peace with yourself. You're not as bad as everybody may say you are, right? Listen, analyze your thought, your actions, right? Learn when not to listen. You don't have to. You don't have to be in every meeting, right? Remember, everything in life is temporary, right? Some key words there for you to keep in mind. Belief in capabilities. Build confidence through action, right? Reflect on past successes. Seek constructive feedback and strengthen persistence. When we talk about building confidence through actions, we mean our confidence grows when we take clear steps, when we are meeting our commitments, and when we see evidence of progress. That makes us feel good, right? When we're reflecting on past successes, that means that we're going to review prior challenges that we faced, that we got through successfully, and to identify the skills, the choices, and the habits that we employed to make that a success. That's us reflecting on our past successes. Seeking constructive feedback means that we are inviting specific feedback from specific people. Very important to remember that. Behavior-based inputs from trusted resources to refine our performance. That's what we're doing when we are seeking constructive feedback, right? Strengthening persistence means that we are supporting effort despite obstacles, right? Despite slow results, despite setbacks in our organization, we are sustaining our efforts. That's what we're talking about when we say we have strengthened our persistence. Navigating uncertainty really does mean making decisions and acting when information is incomplete, when information or the conditions have shifted and the outcomes still remain unclear. We have to understand how to navigate issues of uncertainty. That's going to involve us managing our risk. It's going to involve us setting our priorities. And it's going to involve us adjusting our plans as new information, new data, or new issues come to light about that particular issue. So embrace ambiguity calmly. You have to. That means we're going to maintain a steady behavior when answering, when answers that come to us are still incomplete. Right? We have to maintain the timeliness of our decisions, those things, when we're talking about embracing ambiguity calmly. Right? Adapt strategies flexibly means that we're going to adjust the objective, the resources, and any methods that we've deployed as the conditions change. If we were going down this road at first and we realize that the conditions on the ground has changed, maybe the weather has changed, maybe the resources we thought we had are no longer there, we have to be flexible enough to make a change, a shift on the fly based on the new information. We're going to rely on data for decisions, using the available evidence to guide our choices. Even when the data is imperfect, you as an executive have to still make a decision. Building tolerance for ambiguity. Ambiguity is always around us, right? Everything is always kind of in flux, right? A little bit unclear. But when we are building a tolerance for ambiguity, it means that we're going to increase the comfort that we feel with uncertainty. We have to get comfortable understanding there will be a level of uncertainty in all of the operations that we are part of. And we do that through practice. We do that through reflection. We do that through always having structured decision tools at our disposal. Here we have a scenario earnings call under fire scenario. Feel free to pause the video at any point to review the scenario and address the student task you see below. Same here for reflection questions. Feel free to review the reflection questions and come up with some answers. You may surprise yourselves. Key characteristics of a resilient leader. These are the observable traits and the behaviors that enable steady performance, sound judgment, and recovery during a disruption of, of the leader. These are the traits of the leader. They include things like emotional control, adaptive thinking, clear communication, disciplined execution, and that constant focus on people and the mission. Clear focus on people and the mission. So, key characteristics of resilient leaders: adjust strategies readily, reconsider positions thoughtfully, encourage team innovation, and prioritize problem solving. So, when we're talking about adjusting priorities, adjust strategies readily, what we're meaning is shifting our plans and our resources allocations when the conditions change and the results fall short, right? When we make those adjustments, we keep the goal stable while we're updating those methods, updating the timelines, and updating the execution plans for our mission completion, right? When we're reconsidering positions thoughtfully, means that we're reevaluating decisions when new evidence presents itself, when they appear or assumptions have that we had originally held are proven to be wrong or incorrect. We have to reconsider our position on that, right? It's going to take things like new input. We have to test some of those options that may come to us, and we sometimes have to change direction, really, without being defensive and just get on with it, right? Encouraging team innovation means that we're going to create conditions where the team proposes improvements to whatever the issue that they see. And we got to encourage experimentation within safe trials, right? Let's test this out, see if it is effective for what we need or not. And then we got to prioritize problem solving. Prioritize problem solving means that we're going to focus our attentions on our root causes, on the root causes of the issue, the decision points, and the actions that ultimately successfully remove barriers to what we're trying to achieve. Again, we talked about emotional intelligence a little while ago, and remember, we're talking about self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, motivation, and people skills when we're talking about emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence allows us to stay composed under stressful situations. That means that we as leaders, we maintain our calm behavior, consistent and decision standards during those high pressure times, right? We support our team. Our team needs effectively means that we as leaders have identified what the team requires to perform well, right? Things such as clarity, our clarity. We got to be clear in our leadership messaging, resources that they might need to be effective, and whatever training or workload relief they need in order for them to meet the objectives that we've established for them. Resolving conflicts diplomatically. That simply means that we have to address disagreements early, and we have to use a respectful language, clear facts, and shared goals to get through that conflict point or that disagreement that may occur between our personnel. And then building trust and collaboration. That simply means that we're going to earn the trust through reliability, right? Demonstrating reliability in our actions, demonstrating fairness in our actions, demonstrating transparency in our actions and in our communications as leaders. Purpose and vision, really, this is the why and the where of our leadership, right? Our purpose defines the reason for the organization's work, right? While the vision describes the future state or that guides our priorities and our decisions, the future state. So that's a vision, right? So having an understanding purpose and vision as it relates to resilience building is maintaining a focus on the goals, right? Motivate with clear direction and aligning team with vision and communicate with purpose. Key point here is motivate with clear direction, giving your team specific aims, decision boundaries, and near-term targets. When we're talking about communicating purpose effectively, we're talking about explaining why the work that they do matters. using plain language, right? No need for jargon or acronyms, and you have to tie what they do to how the stakeholders may value that and how the mission succeeds as a result of their actions in the workplace. Balanced perspective. Celebrate achievement. That's your responsibility as the leader. Recognize results while staying honest about what enabled that success. Chances are your people, and what still needs attention. We're not blaming anyone. We just know that this was a gap that we've identified, right? Learning from our mistakes constructively. You got to be honest with yourself. You got to treat errors as information for you being able to improve things like your decision making as leaders, your skills, the training for your people, and ultimately changing your processes probably, right? Fostering growth through reflection. That's us using a structured reflections to access or to assess choices, assumptions, and any outcomes, right? That's how we foster growth. We have to identify what we got right and what we got wrong. And then promote continuous improvement. Here's just the steps to improvement, continuous improvement implementation. As you can see here, define the objective, key performance, things like that. And you can just follow along. That's one of many images you can use. Here's a scenario for you to review. Feel free to address the 1-minute student task below. And reflection questions for this particular section. Same as before, feel free to review the reflection questions and answer them. You may surprise yourself. These are the 4 areas we covered today in the Foundations of Executive Presence. And in your workbook, there are there is one figure and there is a worksheet for you to tackle. And these are our homepage QR code. Feel free to go out to any one of them. The one here, the Google reviews, if you have reviewed this particular video, feel free to leave us a review about it. And if you are interested in learning more about MVP Training Solutions, you could find information about us on any of the sites you see there. Again, that's who I am. We are so glad that you are here. And I'll stop sharing now. Thank you again for your time. We look forward to seeing you all again in another session with us. Again, Dr. Parker, MVP Training Solutions. And this was Resilience Building Mastery, Module 1 course on the Skool platform. We look forward to seeing you again real soon. Take care.